Hey everyone, today I have three unique stories from the Philippines that gives you a good snapshot of the literature in this country. And stick around, I'll also tell you about the laziest person in the Philippines. I hadn't read a single book by a Filipino author, and I couldn't even spell the name of the country correctly. So it was a complete eye-opener for me. Most of the literature deals with the injustices of colonial powers, first the Spanish, then American, and then Japanese. But my focus was to read fiction that was unique and creative and rich in storytelling. So I picked one novel and two short stories and a bonus folktale. All these stories are available online for free. My first pick is a short story by one of the most beloved writers in the country. It's called May Day Eve, published in 1947 by Nick Joaquin. It is taught in schools so that most Filipinos know this story. Oh, I love this story. It's such an innovative and brilliant short story that terrifies you as well as delights you. But mostly it's a tragic love story that neither of them actually die. They live together and that is the tragedy. What is the story? In 1847, Agueda, a young girl, is told if she wants to see her future, she needs to look at a mirror in a dark room. Terrified, she steps into the dark room all alone with a candle. But wait until what you see. It's shocking. She has closed her eyes, terror-stricken. A voice behind her, her own daughter, asks her, "What did you see, mommy?" This magic realism moment has apparently inspired many South American writers such as Gabriel, Garcia, Marquez. She sees herself in the mirror, but not the young, naive, and full of hope and dreams. Instead, she sees a bitter, resentful old woman. She utters bitterly, "I saw the devil." Her daughter interrogates her and finds resemblance between her father and the devil that she describes in the mirror to reveal the bitterness she feels towards the man she has married. On the way back upstairs, she meets Badoy, drunk, recently returned from Europe, who stops her for a dance. There is a tussle. She drops the candle and bursts into tears. He apologizes, but she beats him on the hand fiercely out of vengeance after seeing him in the mirror, presumably, and flees the scene. Badoy, thinking of revenge the next day, suddenly remembers her face and madly falls in love with her, but still harboring vengeance. Years pass, and we are in 1890. One night, Badoy passes the room with the mirror and sees a face that brings terror to his back and reminds him of that May Day evening when he had returned from Europe. He sees his grandson staring at the mirror, saying that he wanted to see his future wife. The old man tells him that he once saw a witch in the mirror who bewitched, tortured, ate his heart, and drank his blood. The grandson tells him that grandma had seen a devil in that same mirror once, when she was young. He remembers that night when she had bitten his hand, the years of misery that they had spent together, the anguish on his face and the grief in his throat, the cruelty of life and old age. As I read it, it's poetic and it's really spooky and full of hope and dreams of young people. The scene with the mirror is very interesting as mirror represents the memory of the past. It's similar to what Proust talked about. Objects have properties that reveal or hold our past. The raging love that dissipates over time. It's time that is the cruelest. There's rage, passion, innocence, and bitterness. A wonderfully honest account of what happens to a couple over a period of 40 years, from teenage to old age. In between is a mirror, or their memories. This is a story of how time changes you and sometimes we no longer recognize ourselves. Only a mirror, a silent object, can tell us who we were and who we are now. I love this story. Now to our next choice. It's perhaps the most important literary work in the history of the Philippines. Not only the literature, but also politics. It's written by the national hero who is revered throughout the country. The author had a very tragic end to his life, and it was directly connected to the writing of this novel. So this novel and its author are an integral part of the Philippines literature. It's called Noli Me Tangere by Jose Rizal, published in 1887. It was written in Spanish and it means touch me not, but the English translation is titled Social Cancer. It's taught in schools and deals with the injustice of the Spanish colonialism and Catholic Church. And to give a bit of context, the author was actually executed by the Spanish rulers for writing this novel. Okay, let me just tell you what this story is. Ibarra, the son of a wealthy man, returns after 7 years in Europe following the death of his father. In Manila, he meets Damaso, a priest who people say was involved in the death of his father. However, he decides to forgive the man. Instead, he wants to help the country by building a school, as he believes in education, the only way to bring change. There are several warnings, but he either ignores them or takes half-hearted actions. He's quite rational but naive. His main goal is to marry Maria, the daughter of a well-off man, and use his wealth to promote education in the country. But what stands against him is the whole colonial system, but mainly the church or two priests. After several confrontations with the priests and hearing the endless injustices that happen to the innocent people, he feels disillusioned. He befriends Elias, a revolutionary who suggests he uses his influence to bring reform in the system, but Ibarra thinks he has no influence. Soon there is an uprising and he is implicated and arrested. Those involved are killed or imprisoned. Elias helps him escape but later shot dead. Maria goes insane. On the surface, it looks like a patchwork duvet divided into many squares telling stories of a variety of people from very top to the very bottom. But you soon realize that this patchwork duvet hides a sinister world of injustice, corruption, and outright lawlessness, and looting by the ruling priests and the government. It doesn't matter who you are in this world, as long as you disagree with the church authorities, you are punished. Ibarra's weakness, too educated and too rational. If he was cunning and proactive like his enemies, he would have been more successful. There's no accountability when you're only accountable to God, not the people who you rule. When I was reading it, I was safe in the knowledge that I was reading a piece of fiction, despite all the madness. But when you learn that the person who wrote this novel was actually shot dead by the Spanish rulers, you realize that it isn't fiction anymore. The central romance seems so frivolous in the face of madness outside, and you can see why their love is impossible. I'm not interested in nationalism, but I didn't feel this novel focused on that either. It focused on the injustices that went on in the Philippines. Nobody's quite innocent. The local people are also guilty for laziness and gambling, and the ruling class for exploiting and oppressing any voice of dissent. The novel implies that the religious elite were untouchables, only answerable to God, not people. Therefore, the abuse of power was rampant. It's not a perfect novel. There are too many excessive details, unnecessary explanations, too much of religious events. I also found a lot of racism toward Chinese and Indians. But despite all these shortcomings, the novel is very powerful for portraying shocking events that took place in the novel and the tragic outcome for the author, and also how it triggered the anti-colonial revolution in the country, making it the single most important work of literature in the Philippines. Now to our last story. It's completely different as it doesn't deal with anything as deep and tragic as the last story. But nonetheless, it's a beautiful short story. It's called The Summer I Learned to Bike by E.L. Coe. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any information about the author, but found this story in an online collection of Filipino short stories. It's about two teenage boys who get lucky when the Americans defeat the Japanese in Manila. And the looting that ensues immediately after the Japanese are kicked out, the two boys have their dream come true. They get a bicycle against all odds. When the Americans liberate Manila, the air appears different. The people breathe freedom, so much so that people go out looting shops and businesses, and there are chaotic scenes everywhere. Tony, our narrator, is 10, and Pitoy, his friend, live in the poorest neighborhood, so having a bike is something they can only dream of. But we are in 1946 at the end of World War II. During the looting, the two skinny little boys have no chance against the bigger and more muscular men. Tony manages to bring some calendars and toilet paper home, and his elder sister grounds him that he cannot go out again. Now, unable to go out, he is curious what his friend Pitoy has found. 2 days later, Pitoy shows up with a spanking new bike. He tells him Conrad, the most handsome college basketball player, gave him the bike, knowing that Conrad not charitable unless you are a beautiful girl, whom he courted many. So he wants to know the truth. Pitoy tells him that he caught Conrad having sex with a married woman, so Conrad had given the bike to keep him quiet. Tony tells him that now he knows the secret too. A worried Pitoy is too terrified of Conrad, so he allows Tony to ride the bike and the two share it as if it belongs to both. I like the modesty and innocence in this story, despite how they exploit someone else's secret, not in a sinister way, but in a beautiful way. It also sets the scene of chaos in Manila in 1946 and how a massive political change in the fortune of your country can have a small windfall for two teenage boys. After reading the long, tragic novel, this was a massive breather and I loved every bit of it. Also, I loved how the huge historical event was seen from a child's perspective. Not how it changed the country, which I'm sure it did, but also how it changed the lives of two teenage boys for one summer that they learned to ride a bike, which is wonderful. Now I will tell you about the laziest yet the most famous person in the Philippines. His name is Juan Tamad. He's known for being extremely lazy. There are many stories about him, but I'll read my favorite. Juan Tamad's mother tells him that it's time he took a bride. He asks his mother what sort of woman should he look for. His mother replies, a woman of few words. Juan searches long and hard, but all the women he encounters seem to talk too much. Finally, he comes upon a house where an old woman and her daughter live. Upon seeing the girl, he proposes, will you marry me? The girl simply stares at him. He tells himself, ah, here's a woman of few words. And he lifts her up and takes her back to his mother. His mother chastises him for he had brought back a corpse. To conclude this video, what I learned about literature in the Philippines is that politics and religion are a very integral part of it, which isn't surprising as the country is very religious and politics seems to be an important aspect of life there. But what I liked about these stories, their storytelling. I especially love the short story May Day Eve for the unique way it combines the mysterious, surreal, and magical and also very realistic and mash them all into one amazing and deep story. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching. Please let me know in the comment section which one you like the best. And if you're new here, please subscribe, like, and share. And follow me on this journey to read books and stories from every country on earth. Thank you very much.